Okay, there it is. We are live. It is August 26th. And dude, it feels like it's been August 26th because it's 100 degrees here in Texas. It feels like it's like Groundhog Day here in Texas right now. Is it hot where you're at?
No, it's the best time of year to be in Wisconsin. It's like
No.
79 and sunny today.
We
Yeah,
might
we don't
cancel
we
this.
don't get many days like this. So you got to give them to us when we get them. So
We might have to cancel like this. Like I didn't know you were gonna go there like 76 and sunny. That's just
yeah, it'll be
that.
snowing tomorrow. So it's
Well, okay. We'll give everyone a quick introduction of who you are and what you do, and we'll hop into it, man.
yeah. So my name's Chris Barrett. I own and operate Midwest CPA. We're an accounting firm that focuses on working with business buyers and sellers. So we help with quality of earnings analysis, both on the buy side and the sell side. And then a lot of our buyer clients, after they buy their business, need ongoing accounting support. So we stick around and help them with their outsourced accounting, controllership, fractional CFO needs, as well as tax and tax planning. So I started the firm about 4 years ago. We've grown now, worked on a few hundred different transactions. We've got a team of about 22 people, and here we are.
Okay, so I want to talk about the QV, especially the SBA range here in a second. But
Sure.
you've hit on something that I think it's come up a few times here recently, and that's I'm not sure that owners realize how many buyers they are, because the amount of firms I talk to, they're like, yeah, we do buy side work and we're slammed. It's like owners are like, if you bring me a buyer, I said, well, if you have a good business, that is the easiest thing in the world to do. And
Mhm.
so I don't know what your ratio is of buyers versus sellers, but maybe unpack that, like how many buyers. It doesn't matter the range, but super niche industries, okay. But generally speaking, they're everywhere, it
Yeah.
seems.
Yeah, there's a ton of activity out there. And I just saw it posted. I don't know what the number was, but someone was posting, the total amount of like dry powder, whatever that there is
Yeah.
available in PE right now. And there's a ton, right? There's a ton of capital out there that has to get deployed, which means that there's a lot of hungry buyers, both at that side, like institutional level, as well as individuals, just with the growth of ETA or whatever you want to call it, that's buying a business. There's a lot more individuals that are going down that route, that are interested in buying companies, and it's a great path for a lot of them because of the success of some other people. There's a lot more activity, a lot more opportunities for if you want to sell your business and you got a decent business, you're likely going to get a lot of offers.
And I think what was surprising to me is my focus used to be sending the bigger deals on and doing kind of the SBA range. Now I don't really, we send that down and focus on the bigger deals. The amount of buyers, and what I'm saying, the bigger deals, the plus 10 million space, it's crazy. There's just buyers everywhere. And so,
Mm-hmm.
but you said the key word, you want to attract a good buyer. You have a good
Yeah.
business. And I don't think a lot of owners, they're like, I've got a great business, but well, I've tried to stress to owners, your final customer is the person buying your business. And so if you don't build it for them, and I get this, it's a process, but if you don't build something with them in mind, you're going to leave money on the table. So what are some of the mistakes? I know that you're a CPA, so the QV standpoint, but what are some of the mistakes that you see owners consistently make that they should be working on now?
Yeah, so one of the biggest risk when someone's buying a business is how reliant is the business on that owner. So it can be really easy when you're building to continue to stay in the weeds on day-to-day work. And if you started your business because you love what you do and you love serving the customer and being involved in the final product that goes out the door, that's great. And so there's no one saying that you can't do that, but if you do want to sell your business someday, you have to find a way to remove yourself from operations. Because if you're super involved in the selling, in the production, in the client relationship, then that creates a lot of risk for someone that's acquiring the company, because they're the transition risk is super high. They don't know if the revenue is going to continue. They don't know if the costs are going to be different because you were absorbing all those costs yourself by just working a lot. So I think that's a big one, is think about, what would this business look like if I wasn't involved in it? And generally what happens when we've worked with some clients that they're maybe a couple of years out from selling, or their ultimate goal is selling, And if we're able to help push them towards getting out of those operations, what a lot of times what happens is they grow a lot faster. They actually end up with more cash flow and less in the weeds work from the owner, because you have capacity now. You have a scalable process that other people can do, which allows you to go out there and bring in more work. And you can't do that if you're the person that's trying to do everything in the business.
Well, and I think that what gets lost when people say that, because I agree with everything you said, and I think my thesis is the reason it scales faster is because you take me, I'd be much better at sales than I would operations or the books. Like that'd be my strength. So the business that I would build is going to be better for sales, especially if I'm really dependent, which means the books are going to be okay. Operations are going to be okay. I can do that stuff, but it's just not I don't like it as much as I do sales. Yeah. And so if you're owner dependent, your business is going to skew to your strength, which means it's going to be weak in a lot of other areas. As you remove yourself, all the things that you touched on, but then you have to go, wait, operations is not that good. We can't scale. I need someone to help me with this because I'm not the person. Or if it's sales and you have all the relationships, I've stressed with customer concentration. Owners are okay with customer concentration if they're the person that the clients are talking to. But you wouldn't want a business to where you had like 2 or 3 clients and your key sales guy was the person talking to them. You go, that guy might leave and he might go work somewhere else and he might take those customers with me. So you want more customers. And so owner dependency to me, especially in this range, is the thing that owners should really focus on if they're going to exit, because it does make them look at everything you've just touched on. Thoughts? I mean, that's how I break it down. Thoughts?
Yeah. And it changes your multiple, right? Yeah. So not only we might be able to grow the EBITDA faster, but with less risk results in higher multiple. And most smaller businesses are selling somewhere between 2 and 5x. And probably the biggest determinant of whether you're going to be on the lower end of 2x or the higher end of 5x is really like how removed is that owner for operations. There's other components that come into it, but of all of them, that's most likely the biggest one.
Yeah. So what percentage of the buyers or deals in general do you see the PE side come in that you're working on?
Yeah, especially we could talk about it a little bit, but this new SOP change just came in. I think it's going to be a little bit even more active, especially at that brink of the SBA limit, above 3 million, above around 5 million. We were already starting to see more and more private equity firms come down and do add-ons in that range and quick tuck-ins. But I think it's going to be even easier for them now than before, because some of the changes in the SBA SOP have resulted in it being harder for people to buy business if you're not well capitalized already, like the private equity firms are.
I want to talk about the SOP, but I want to drill on this real quick. I see this a lot. Of those PEs that are in your network, how many of those have people ever heard of?
Oh, not many.
Not many. And I think that's the point. I see people, like there was a post about Krispy Kreme and what PE did to it, or Whataburger, what PE did to it. It's like, there are bad PEs, but guys, there are so many PE groups. You got to realize there's some good, some bad, but there are way more that you have no idea even exist than you could possibly imagine. And it's kind of mind boggling, because we think of 6 or 8 or 12 PE groups. No, there is, I talked to one today, never heard of them. There's a ton of these guys out there. And so I think the hate on PE angle is quite easy, but the reality is when you're saying that, you're not even scratching the surface of the PE groups that are out there.
Yeah. There's the world's a lot bigger than you can ever really imagine. I remember when I first started getting into this space and learning about the ETA community itself. I thought, man, there's got to be 7 people a year that are looking to go buy a business, right? Like that's such a weird thing, and you don't really hear about it. It's not very mainstream. Well, it's becoming more mainstream. But then I talk to 500 people a year that are looking to buy a business, and it's been doing that for 4 years now, which is 2,000 people. And there's more out there that I haven't spoken to, and there's other firms like ours, and there's way more people than you can calculate.
Okay, so you mentioned the SBA changes, and so let's maybe, for those people who aren't familiar with kind of the SBA in general, kind of walk through that, and then what are some of the changes that you're starting that they're rolling out that you're talking about?
Yeah, so SBA loans are one of the more common ways we see people finance deals if they're buying in, say, the $1 to $5 million range or sub $5 million businesses. You can sometimes get a little bit above that, so maybe like up to 8 million if you get pari passu or if you get some seller financing on top of it. But deals on the lower end of the market, it's very common for them to be funded with SBA loans. And there's been a variety of changes that just came out 2 Fridays ago that go into place on October 1st. There are some big ones that affect my world specifically, which is the Q of E. The Q of E is now a mandated process for all deals over $3 million in enterprise value. It has to be commissioned by the lender now instead of the buyer. But that's a one big shift. There's others too around who's allowed to bring the down payment. So like if you're not a well-capitalized buyer, historically, a lot of people would go and they'd raise money for the down payment. There's now some restrictions on how much they're able to raise. The DSCR requirements have tightened a bit. Ultimately, I think it's just a reaction to the popularity of the space and more people getting into deals that maybe they shouldn't have gotten into. And the SBA is reacting and trying to be, for the parent in the room and make sure that the kids that are buying all these businesses are behaving. So.
Yeah. A few years ago, the talk was, well, buy $1 million EBITDA or $2 million EBITDA business because it's hard for that to fail. And it's like, guys, I'm sorry, those fail all the time. So if you were a searcher and you bought something like that, it is statistically safer because it has more room for error, but also that note's bigger. And also if things go bad, you are in a real bind. And so to your point about being the adult in the room, there was a lot of talk about buy these bigger companies, and for the right person, yeah, that's a good idea. But for the wrong person, that could be a train wreck because that note's real. that note's serious. And so for those big, I've wondered, what is your stance on that? How do you advise, or do you advise people on how to think about the size of deal that they go after?
Yeah, I generally still do skew in that camp. And I think that the default rates support that the larger deals are a bit more stable and less likely to go bust. But that does not mean less likely.
Give me the range. When you're saying larger deals, what's the range you're saying there?
Let's say, over $1 million in EBITDA versus, versus like we're talking about like SBA size. So like over $1 million in EBITDA versus like under $1 million or under 500,000. Sometimes I'll talk to someone and say, oh, it's my first one. I'm going to buy a business that's doing $250K in EBITDA or earnings. And then there's other people that will target only over $1 million. And I think in general, the people that are going on after those larger deals are buying a bit of a more stable asset. But that doesn't mean that asset is impenetrable and can never fail, right? It's certainly not too big to fail. And it really depends on the buyer. Like, what is their skill set?
Yes.
That's what it all comes down to. And with the growth of the space, there's a lot of hopium being sold, I think, where people are getting sold this dream of, it's kind of like the Chip and Joanna Gaines, right? Fix and flipping houses. Everyone started doing that, right? And now
we're going to do a roll up.
Fix and flip businesses. And it's not as easy as that, right? It's a very difficult thing to run and own and operate a small business. It's not something you're gonna be able to do. It's more than full-time, right? It's not a 40-hour-a-week job. It takes everything you got. And if you don't have the real work ethic and the skill set ready, then by the time you've made the mistake and learned from it, you might already be out of cash.
Well, I think what you said there, I don't necessarily disagree, but my bias from a sales mentality is like, okay, yeah, you can go make sales. Now that's presuming you have cash flow and working capital and you can do all this stuff you need to do. I'm kind of flattening it out here. But from a sales perspective, I'm like, oh, okay, I can go make sales and get this thing going. And then the note's easier to service because now I was doing 500K SDE when I was doing 750K. Oh, my life's a lot better. But if you are more operational focused, then I would tell someone you need a sales partner, someone who can go do the sales stuff. Because if you're not good, if you can't sell, you need the bigger stuff. And so it is case by case. I do agree with that. I just think that the pressure on some of the bigger deals is tough, and the really small deals, man, those are hard. Like those, and I'm talking like I did one a few years ago. It was a gym, and I think they're doing okay, but it was really small and it was tough, and it's like, okay. the numbers just aren't that great here. They're just not. And so and the ability to grow a gym, talking about case by case, is even harder because you just have an area, and they couldn't buy the real estate, so they had to lease that, and they couldn't expand. And so, you could probably raise the monthly fee or whatever, but you're kind of capped at what you can do there, unless you can just get a ton more people to join in, and that's a challenge too. So there's a lot of challenges that go into this process. So the SBA is being more of a parent now, for lack of a better term, to kind of watch it. But they do have to protect the default rate, and you mentioned that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because if the default rate gets too high, they might just cancel the program altogether, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like to your point, kind of backstepping a little bit, like the bigger versus smaller deals. Part of the risk with the small ones too is that, like, when we do diligence on them, oftentimes our bigger deals are easier to diligence because the data is better. Like, there's a little bit more infrastructure there to real businesses have real accounting processes. We just kicked off a deal recently for a $50 million manufacturing company, and we're getting pretty good data from this. So there's things to look through, and there's talks about revenue recognition, and are they doing all this like accounting functions right? But the data is there. Versus another deal we're working on, they have 3 QuickBooks files, and none of them are right, and they have to kind of combine them all together, and it's just a disaster. And it's almost harder and less clear than the larger deals.
That is the risk. I'm with you there. I don't. Yeah, the bigger the deal, the usually it's more clean. And so now you mentioned the Q of E. Historically, it was tax return was the big driver of what the owner could say that they're making. So with the Q of E, is that changing, or why the Q of E? What's going on with that now?
Well, yeah, tax returns are always important, especially if you are buying a business that's the size that's getting funded with an SBA loan, because SBA is it's a government-backed loan, so they want to make sure that the cash flow is substantiated by what has been reported to the government on that tax return. So it's always been a really important part of the process, and it'll continue to be in the SOP for what they say must be in the scope for a quality of earnings report. Part of what's in that scope is that you must tie out the financials to the tax return. That is still an important piece of the puzzle. Also, other parts that are in there, which again, I think all good Q of Es should have had anyway, but I think the SBA is spelling it out to again be the parent and say, you have to make sure that you're hiring a QE provider that is meeting this scope and is qualified to be doing this. So they're looking for things like they want a cash proof, which is making sure that the bank accounts are matching the books. Like I said, they want the tax reconciliation done. They want all the adjustments that are being made to the financials to be tied out and substantiated with support. And they want the bank to take those findings and use it in their DSCR calculation and in the valuation. So the Q of E really is driving now all of the decisions that the bank is making, where before that wasn't necessarily a requirement.
Yeah, I saw on X after this news broke that everyone was going to buy a Q of E firm. So like everyone was excited. So I'm sure it's been a big boom for business.
Well, it's interesting because one of the big, that was what came out right away, right? But there's a few things there. One, I think it is harder for buyers to buy now with an SBA loan, right? If you're not well capitalized, it's now a little bit more difficult. Mm-hmm. So TBD on whether less deals will be done because of that. It's also a shift in that now the QE provider is hired by the lender. They're not hired by the buyer. So I went from having, hundreds, thousands of potential clients that are buying these businesses to now there's like 50 banks that do like all the SBA loans. Mm-hmm. So you have to be a provider with one of those banks, or the bank that's financing the deal. You have to be connected with. So there is a shift there, and then that affects the buyer quite a bit, because part of my job when I'm getting hired as a QE provider is validating what are the actual earnings, right? All those things that are in that new SOP for what must be in scope for a QE. What are the actual earnings? What's the working capital requirement? Are these adjustments legitimate? What's the reliability of these earnings to continue into the future, right? All those are boxes that I check when I do a QE. But we also do a lot of consulting with our buyer clients, especially if they're a first-time buyer. around negotiating working capital, around purchase price allocation, around things that we're hearing in the deal and what we've seen other people do, or post-closing plans and how to be successful post-close based off what we're finding out in diligence. So there's a lot of consulting that goes on in that. And I don't know how that relationship's going to change now, because if the buyer is not hiring the accountant for the Q of E and the bank is, does the buyer no longer have that piece of their deal team? Before, their main deal team was their lender, their lawyer, and their accountant, and then maybe a couple other pieces, but those are kind of the three main pillars. And now, do they not hire an accountant at all? Do they hire an accountant in a different scope than they hired before? Do they still hire an accountant to do a Q of E on top of the lender's Q of E? Do they hire them just to check that Q of E and do some consulting around tax and other items? I'm not sure how that's all going to play out, but it is the headline was really great, and yeah, we were taking it all to the bank, but now it has shifted quite a bit and exactly how it's going to get put into action.
So would you say that this kind of news, this from a general deal flow perspective, is going to have more impact of these SBA deals than the interest rates are?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's just because it's going to limit the buyer pool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the people that are able to do deals, I think, has shrunk a bit.
So one of the things that I've thought, I'm curious because you see the numbers at scale, is my guess is that owners 10 years from now, that their books will be a lot cleaner because they're going to go into it with the mindset that they're going to sell at some point. Whereas right now we're kind of in a weird spot to where a lot of owners didn't build it to be sold. I always tell the story. My dad, he was just going to shut it down, and I took it over. Like, he just said, you want to try? There wasn't really buyers. We had a few offers and a strategic trying to go public and stuff like that, but nothing serious. Ever got serious. But you didn't think about selling your business back in the early 2000s. That wasn't really top of mind, especially for small businesses. And now there's so much education about how to do it, how to position it. Have you seen, from the seller standpoint, a transition to where the books are starting to be more clean? They do have that mindset. They understand stuff like owner dependency, or are we still kind of that phase where that's lagging?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot more seller QFEs now. Now that might just be because we're getting more of them. Like, this might be sample bias, but we've been doing a lot more of them lately, and it's a great. I think all sellers should do it. I think it's a no-brainer because it greatly increases your certainty to close, right? You're finding all the issues that the buyer, or in this case now the lender, is going to find before they find them, so that you can fix any issues before they get there, or just speed up the diligence process because you've answered all the questions they're going to be asked before they even ask them. You can potentially find issues that they're going to ask about and have concerns with, but because you put them out up front, they're now not going to retrade the deal because you told them up front, versus before, if they found them during diligence, now it's a shock and a surprise, and nobody likes surprises when they're making a multi-million-dollar decision. So getting ahead of that stuff's really, I think, really important for a seller. Now, with the new SBA guideline, I don't know exactly how that's going to shift things, because if a seller does their own Q of E, the lender's still going to have to do their own. So it's not like they can assign that Q of E to the lender. So they're still going to need to have two processes done.
I would guess, though, if I was telling a seller, unless I knew the seller's book's really good, probably to go ahead and get it done, because the questions that sellers can get asked can come off as offensive sometimes. And it's like, well, no. The buyers, they're just going to ask this stuff. So kind of preps them for those questions.
Yeah. And if you're getting all the risks out up front, getting clarity around the financials, around the business with a sell side Q of E, it decreases the perceived risk from the buyer, which increases the multiple they're willing to pay. So if you spend $20K on a sell side Q of E, you're generally making your money back pretty easily by getting ahead of all those issues and positioning the business in a better light. And then, you might even find some add backs, things that you didn't think of or wouldn't have been substantiated with the evidence that you had, but a good provider can help substantiate them. Or you might find that the EBITDA you thought you had is not the right EBITDA, but now you know it now before you're well into a diligence process and you've spent money elsewhere, or it's now a shock to everybody, and that ruins the deal.
Yeah, it's weird because I've talked to a bunch of owners, not in the role that you're in, but it's sell side M&A kind of role, or buy side even. And the amount of owners who even knew what the term EBITDA was probably less than 10.
Mm-hmm.
And of the ones that calculated it or thought they had it calculated, maybe 1 or 2 had it right. Most of them were off. I remember there was a company in California, 50 million revenue. They said their EBITDA was 5, and it was like 8 or 10. They were off like that far. And like, that's a big company. You would think they would know. No, they didn't know. And so I've kind of told owners, like, don't worry about it. Let someone else do it. So what is your advice to owners? Because you mentioned they haven't calculated it wrong. Like, do you advise them to try to figure it out, or are you like, no, call me?
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense to hire someone to do it. Having a good team advising you through the process and kind of going to bat for you is going to be so important. Like if a buyer, like let's say you're talking on that end of the market, which we do some sell side QVs for those deals in like 20 to 50 million. And you're going to have a private equity firm, let's say, coming in to buy your business. They're going to hire a QV provider that has done hundreds of these transactions, if not thousands. And they have a team that's ready to rip through, and then they might use that to negotiate against you. Wouldn't it make sense to have someone on your side that's played defense and kind of built your case ahead of time, got ahead of those questions? I think it'd be well worth it.
Do you think that looking ahead, as we talk about kind of the more mindset around owners being more ready to sell, do you think that personal, like right now we're at a spot to where it's very personal for owners. Do you think that we'll ever get to a spot to where it's less personal? Like they're more okay with selling the business or talking about selling the business or getting it ready to sell? Like, because there's so much emotion tied up to it. And I get it, but on some level I don't. So it's kind of perplexing to me.
I think selling a business is always going to be an emotional process, right? It's the biggest financial decision most people are ever going to make. That own a business, right? People that don't own a business probably buy a house, but like if you own a company,
Right.
selling it, selling that business is a very big deal. And getting it right is emotional. It's taxing. It's stressful. And it's more than just money too, right? It's the thing that maybe you grew, or maybe it got passed down to you from your parents, and it's your family's legacy. And you've been hired employees that you've been going to work every day with for 30 years. And just handing that over to someone can be, it's naturally going to be a very emotional process. So.
Yeah. It's weird because everything you said is true. And yet everything you said, I think, is overestimated by the people who have the businesses, right? It's like you want the employees to be taken care of. I'm not saying that you want them to be fired the next day, but also 2 years from now, they're not going to be thinking about you. And so it's really weird because you want it to be done right. You want to preserve what they've built and to help them get a good exit. But also, I think owners sometimes struggle that's their identity, is kind of what you're touching on. But then it is what other people think of you, but not as much as you think not as much as you think that they think it is. And so it's really a weird spot. Like I know that when I sold my company, I don't talk to my former employees. They don't talk to me. We don't think about each other. It's just part of it. And so maybe it's a little bit cold on my end. I don't know, but to me, it's like, okay, if you can get to that escape velocity number, whatever that is for you personally, I always kind of say 15 to 20 million is a safe kind of estimate, depending on the person and all that stuff. But it's kind of ballpark. If you're exiting for 15 to 20, then you should be okay. If you're 65, then obviously a lot less. But if you get that number, then you really should consider looking to sell, because that can change your trajectory. And you can go back to work, get a job, stuff like that. But do you advise owners, is there a certain inflection point, aside from like sickness and divorce and stuff like that, of enterprise value, where they should really look at it? Or is it just a timing thing for you?
Yeah, I think it's up to them. It's a very personal decision. I don't think anyone can make that decision for anyone else. I think everyone's got a different number of what it means to them, or what do you want to do? Like if you sold the business, like like me at my age, right? I could sell my business and retire, right? But what would I do all day, for the next, what am I going to do for the next 40 years? And so I think it's a very personal decision that people need to think about. How do you want to actually be spending your time? What's an ideal life for you? And how much money do you need in order to live that life? And for some people, you hit that number and the thing you want to be doing all day is not working at that company anymore, then yeah, you should sell that business. So that thing's just giving you stress and it's not worth it, then get out of it. Other people, I think, create a lot of meaning through running their business. And if you're still good at it and you got runway left, then why not keep running it?
Yeah, on the meeting thing, that's what a lot of people have said. It's kind of their identity that they're tied to it. I wonder how much that's tied to the owner dependency, though. Like because they have built a business where they're needed all the time, or most of the time. If they remove themselves and they're not needed, they don't show up, everything still works. I wonder if that would change that dynamic some.
Yeah, potentially. I still think that even if you're out of operations and out of sales, like you're still in a leadership role, right? Like no matter how big your company is, if you're the CEO of it, you still have a job to do, right? You're still a part of the direction of the company. And I think regardless, you're still going to derive some meaning from that.
Yeah. I think I don't disagree. I think it is case by case. I think the hard part becomes in this conversation is I've seen companies that the owner could have sold for a lot of money. He didn't. And then he wished he would have, right? Yeah. Because it tanked. And I've seen owners who have never built a company that could be sold for what they need it to be sold for. And they've got to work way too long. And so for me, I always kind of talk about it from the trenches side of the war room. Like I've been on the beach, man. I've seen these bad things play out, and so I'm a little bit jaded because of maybe you should consider selling it. And whether you use us or someone else, I don't care. I'm just saying it's very tough because things go good and then they go bad. I mean, I've got some really bad horror stories from owners who, I know a company that was doing almost $100 million a year in revenue. They're in bankruptcy now, and it's now, is that the exception? Yes. But can it happen? Yes. And so it's one of those things that I don't know how I think more owners just should have the conversation of really what they're trying to do. What is their long-term goal? And my advice has been build it to the level that you could sell it for what you need to retire off of in case something happens. And then you could go ahead and exit, obviously if it's some things you can, but more or less, all things equal, wife gets sick, grandkid gets sick, whatever it is, you need to exit, you're ready to. I don't think a lot of owners are prepping to that level, though.
Yeah, and I think both sides of the equation, right? Some people regret keeping their business because they could have sold it for more. Other people regret selling it, right? Once you sold it, you can't get it back, right? You have a non-compete.
Yep.
So if you're going to sell, and I'm sure you do this with some of your people you work with, but make sure you have a plan. Like, what is your day going to look like? Because the phone's not going to ring anymore, right? You're not, you're no longer the guy, right? You better have a plan for what you're going to do. And there's only so much golf that you can play, and so many hours you can sit on a beach. So,
yeah, what I've tried to tell owners is, if you're fixing owner dependency, as you remove yourself, use that to figure out what might be next. So charities, whatever it is, so don't remove yourself and then show up at the office and then that stops. And you're like, well, what do I do? Well, you weren't really doing as much as you thought, but you had a routine. So is it, what is that next phase? In some owners, it is, they have like a little bait and tackle shop or stuff like that, where it makes money, but it's a hobby, right? But it keeps them busy. And so that's great. And so I lean towards more, if you're going to fix owner dependency so that you can sell one day, use that to figure out what's next. Don't wait until the last minute, because that is a recipe for disaster. I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So one of the things I've heard, especially in the SBA range, and I had Jackie Hirsch on, she had a great story about someone building a boathouse and how much it costs them. Is it getting easier in the SBA world, especially these size deals, to talk to owners about not writing stuff off through the business, or is it still a conversation that takes a lot of work to be had?
Yeah, it still comes up. I mean, we lost a client the other day because we were doing their monthly, accounting and tax work, and they wanted me to write off their boat for $350,000, and they were not a company that needs to have a boat that ought to be written off.
Wait, so the TikTok advice wasn't right? They couldn't hop on there and take a photo and it counts. That's not how it works.
It wasn't right. Yeah. So we had to part ways, and I bet they'll find another person that'll sign that return, and they'll roll the dice on whether they get audited. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that goes on. And then it results that when you go to sell your business, you now have to explain all of your sins.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be very hard to have your cake and eat it too. Mm-hmm. You're probably not going to get credit when you go to sell your business for everything that you were running through your business that was personal in nature. We had one client that was buying a business, and the seller they're a builder, and they had spent like hundreds of thousands of dollars building their own house, multi-million-dollar house, and they'd run all of it through the company. And it's really difficult for me to look at you and see that you've run $2 million through your P&L over the last 4 years as you built your home, and say that you bought wood on this project that you're saying is your personal home, and then you also bought wood for something else. Like, how do I know? How can I trust you? You lied to the IRS, or you're lying to me. One of the two. Either way, you're a liar. So,
it's not a good spot to be in for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So SBA has blown up. The plus SBA is I kind of, we do like 10 minutes a floor, so is pretty active. We're talking a year from today. What's your prediction of what's going to happen in the market?
That's a good question. I think I think buyers are probably going to find a way around a lot of these rules. I think like the investors that used to invest in a lot of these deals, that now the guidelines have tightened up. I bet they're probably going to find some ways around it. And then the SBA is probably going to change the rules again. It seems to be the cat and mouse game that occurs a lot. But people are still going to find ways to get deals done. Either purchase price is going to come down because there's not as much of a buyer pool that can afford the deals at the size range, or just more well-capitalized buyers are going to take more of the deals, and they're still going to get those deals done. So one way or another, transactions are still going to happen. It's just the way that they happen are under a new rule set now, and people are going to have to adapt to that rule set. Okay.
So last question for you. Your favorite conspiracy theory is what? I'm just joking. We're talking about that offline. We said, you asked what we're going to talk about. I said, anything. You said conspiracy theories, so I decided to throw that back at you. Oh, my bad. My bad. Yeah. I'm just kidding. I don't
know. I probably have to be Sasquatch if I had to pick one. I think he might be real. I think
I got a guy like a little poster last year. Not a poster, one of those little metal tin posters, whatever. It's like, Sasquatch. And so, old Sasquatch. I hadn't heard that one in a minute. So, but he's a big Sasquatch. He's a believer. He's a big Sasquatch guy. So, anyways, all right. Where can people find you at, Chris? And you work nationwide, I guess, because it said Midwest behind you, but you work nationwide, correct?
Yep, we work nationwide. My email is chris@midwest.cpa. Reach out anytime there. And then my website is www.midwest.cpa. And then I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well as X. So feel free.
Is LinkedIn really the place to be right now? I keep hearing talk. I always struggle, man. I try, but I struggle.
Yeah, LinkedIn's been better for us lately. X engagement seems to be down. That's probably just because I'm not interesting. But LinkedIn, I seem to be more interesting to some people. So.
Okay, I'll have to go steal some of your ideas from LinkedIn, because I try LinkedIn and I just get so bored. I don't know what to do. Like, I can't engage. There's nothing happening there to talk to people about. It seems like so.
Yeah, there's not as much conspiracy theory talk on LinkedIn as there is on X. X is better for conspiracy theories. So,
that's funny.
A little bit more fun.
Yeah, there's plenty of that on there. All right, man. Well, it's good catching up. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great chatting.